Welcome to Bodacious Estate Conversations, the podcast where we skip the polite small talk and get straight to the real story about handling a loved one's property. From unexpected challenges to the messy emotions nobody warns you about, I bring you unfiltered stories, practical advice, and clever shortcuts from people who've been there and the professionals who know the way. If you want honest answers, bold strategies, and the confidence to take control, you're in the right place. Here is your host, Casey King.
Thanks for tuning in. On today's episode of Bodacious Estate Conversations, I'm excited to chat with our guest who built a remarkable career from volunteer to clinical director over 10 years at Olivia's House, a leading organization who supports children and families through bereavement. She's currently the clinical director at Olivia's House, providing peer support, education programs, and grief counseling for families navigating loss. Outside of work, she enjoys making chainmail, knitting, and relaxing. Let's give a warm welcome to Julia Dunn. I'm thrilled to have you on Bodacious Estate Conversations, Julia.
Thank you so much for having me. It is great to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited. So, today we're exploring the dedicated world of children's grief and how families can navigate loss with compassion and understanding. Stick around until the end to hear how Julia's insights on brain's biochemical process of bereavement and why reconstruction is key to healing. Okay, let's just dig right into it. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, what are the most common challenges parents face when explaining death to their children, and how does Olivia's house help with that?
Absolutely. One of the most common fears from the parent side of things when it comes to talking about death is just that fear. Not knowing if you're going to say the wrong thing, will that make it worse for my child? This experience that I already don't want them to be having, that it already breaks my heart to know that their hearts are hurting. Is there a way that I might make this worse? And that fear is often what stops them from saying the right thing. And that's where Olivia's house comes in. No judgment. It's not about, oh, you said the wrong thing. No, no. I think Maya Angelou, it's her quote, when you know better, you do better. So we are here as the experts to help you know better when it comes to talking to children about death. And even just me saying the word death, that's one of the keys. We are scared to say someone died or someone is dying. You know, we say they passed away, they're gone, you're not going to see them again, they won't be coming home anymore. We think that is softening the blow when actually that sounds terrifying and mysterious. And I'm very confused about why this is happening versus that straightforward conversation.
Yeah, I think I told you the story. So, when my son was young, I want to say he was like 5 or 6 years old. We had a funeral to go to. It was a friend that was in a motorcycle accident, and I can't remember exactly what he wanted to do, but he wanted to go somewhere and do something fun, and we were going to this funeral, and I didn't know the right, like, how to explain exactly what we were doing. So I said, "I'm sorry, babe. This is gonna take a minute. We have to go in and pay our respects." And not really realizing that that wasn't a great way of explaining what we were doing at all. But we were there for a little bit, maybe 20 minutes or so, and he comes over and he kind of tugs on me. He's like, "Mom, where's this respect guy? Can we pay him and go?" It's like, okay, yeah, he took it very literal, and yeah, I did not explain that very well at all. So that's where Olivia's house comes in. You like just kind of help, like, all right, let's make this clear so that we really do have a good understanding of what's happening.
Absolutely. And families, professionals, anyone in the community can call anytime and they will get us on the phone. You know, they'll be talking to the clinical director or the development director or our executive director. We're a small but mighty staff. But when you call us, you're getting someone on the other line that is ready to help. and we have that expertise. And it's not just in our own brains. Olivia's house is home to the largest grief and loss lending library on the entire East Coast, one of the largest in the nation. And that's just our cool little, nonprofit here in York County. We have thousands of books on our shelves for every age, toddler all the way up to adults, on any topic you could imagine related to loss. And so it's not just me or us having this conversation and giving you the education. It's let us load you up with these resources so that you can continue this healing at home with your family.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it's not just, I mean, obviously it's devastating when you lose a grandparent or parent or a sibling, somebody close to you, but also when they lose pets, you guys help deal with that too.
Absolutely. That's often a child's first experience with loss. And I've even had calls about a fish that has died. It's not always the dog or the cat that grew up with you. It's the bunny that you rescued, and now your child is really struggling, even though you only had that rabbit for maybe a week. But it was their first experience with death, and they're having crying spells. And we gotcha. We got all kinds of resources we can help you through with that. And then, of course, all the way up to the dog that slept in their bed every single night, and that major loss of routine. That might hit a child way harder than Great Aunt Rhonda, who lives across the country, who they don't see very often. They're going to be mourning that childhood pet much more strongly. And to be able to normalize that for families and say, this is what we expect to see, that's a sign of positive brain development.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that. So I lost my shepherd last August, so it's been a little bit over a year now. But when it was more recent, whenever I would come home and open up the garage door to walk in the house, I would almost hear the jingle of her collar, and then it would take me a second and be like, "Oh, she's not coming today. She's not." And I'm getting choked up talking about it, but I imagine it's like that. Like, I'm not the only person that experiences that. Like, it's hard for somebody that, a little person that doesn't have the life experiences, 'cause they're going through the same stuff, right?
They are. They are. And much like what you just experienced, the bereavement process is lifelong. There's always going to be things that kind of trigger us or bring up those bells of emotion. And that's a wonderful thing. It doesn't always feel great, but it's a sign of positive healing. And that is another piece that we are often educating parents about, is that it's not always about front loading a ton of support in the first day or minutes after the loss has happened. Sometimes it is about taking a breath, getting empowered as the adult with the tools, but knowing that you're going to be using those tools for weeks and months and years to come, and that is natural. That is not a sign of, oh, it's been a year and a half, and just it got mentioned at school and I got a call from his teacher that he was crying in class. That is not a red flag. That's not a sign to me that something's going wrong. That tracks to me as, okay, that makes sense. We're seeing healing still.
Yeah. And so there, I mean, obviously there's no timeline, right? Everybody's different with how long it takes. And so is the progression, like, time heals everything. Like, I feel like that normally rings true in most cases. But do you ever see somebody that's still, like, maybe it was 10 years ago and we're still, we think about them and get choked up, and I mean, is there ever a point where you can turn it off? I feel like there's not.
Yeah. It's not, when I say it's a lifelong process, I really do mean that. But process doesn't mean lifelong pain. It doesn't mean lifelong always feeling the exact same way you felt at the beginning. It's just still part of the same process. Sort of like parenting, when you have a child, when they're very young, you do have to, you are their main source of everything: food, nourishment, sleep, routine. As they get older and someday they're having their own families, you are not as needing to be as hands on, but you are always a parent. And even if your child dies, you are still always a parent. And that is still, that's part of that process. It's just different portions of it. So, I'm you mentioned Reconstruction earlier, and that is, it's part of the bereavement process. It's the kind of end part of the bereavement process. Again, not end meaning that you're coming to the finish line, but it's the part of the process you get to after you have done some internal work, you've felt those feelings, you've learned how to cope, and you've made it through those early stages of shock and numbness and feeling numb and zombie like to the world. So by the time you get to Reconstruction, you've been walking through the muck for a while and you've been fighting your way out of it. But Reconstruction and how you incorporate that loss into your life, that is what you continue to take forward with you. And I speak to that myself. I've had a loss as a child, and in the work that I continue to do every day is part of my reconstruction.
So it's so interesting. So I think of like working out as reconstruction, right? So in order for your muscle to get bigger, you first have to break it down so that it can repair itself, and that's how you get stronger. Is it the same? Like if you lose somebody, the next time it happens and you experience grief, um, does it ever get easier? I mean,
A lot of that depends on the narrative that we tell ourselves. And I think that speaks to a lot of things in our life. And some of that is our resilience, which resilience is a temperament. There's a lot of research that says we're born with a certain level of resilience, and then we are able to be nurtured into resilience as well. There is also a pattern of the opposite of that, where we can really tell ourselves how much of a victim we are, and how, I've suffered so much and I've had so many losses, and that is what drags me down in this life. And if that is your narrative and where you feel safe and comfort, because we need to seek comfort. That's what coping skills are. We want to seek positive coping skills that bring us comfort in a forward moving way, but we don't always. Sometimes we find those coping skills that keep us stuck. And when finding that narrative as our coping skill, and we are a parent, our children really internalize that. And that is how they then see their own story. And that is how their resilience does or doesn't get nurtured. So I believe fully that the more we experience in life and build up those coping skills, that is what gets us prepared for the next loss and for the next win and for all of it. It's finding what works for us to move us through, and finding what doesn't work so that we can not try that one again.
dismiss it. Yep.
Yep, exactly. I believe that is possible for everyone, but it does require quite a bit of introspection, which is not everyone's, cup of tea. So yeah.
Okay. I like that answer. So Olivia's house, I've had the pleasure of touring the Hanover facility. It's amazing. And each room you have set up for different age groups and how you communicate based off of that age group. Like I don't remember what ages where you have the puppets and you kind of when you're talking to the little kiddos, you're like using the puppets.
That's for our little ones program for our 3 to 5 year olds. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And then there was one with horses all over. I was like, "Oh, I can just picture myself as a little girl, like, hanging out in that room." And then the teenage room, which was like a '50s diner. So cool. Yeah. So the program that you guys have, that you rotate through, those are kiddos that are, like, just recently experienced loss? Is that
So it's not about recent. It's really just our peer support education programs are for the family. So it is something that the children and their parents attend together. And it is really just one of our services that we offer. It's one of our original services. It's kind of how Olivia's house got started. It is a beautiful service, and we are so proud and put so much work into it. But when a family reaches out to us for support, we're not worried about, signing them up for a group and, anything. We're just worried about, what is your name? What is going on? What are you struggling with? And how can we help? And sometimes at the end of that conversation, it's, oh, you need to be in our group. After everything that you've shared, and that this is healthy bereavement, it's natural bereavement. Could utilize that support from your peers. It would be nice for your children to see that they're not alone. You're ready for that give and take of a group setting. Let's get you involved in our next program, and we will reach out to you as soon as we're starting to plan that. And sometimes the result of that initial conversation is, let's get you the right support that you need. Maybe that's some one-on-one work with an individual. I know you mentioned at the beginning grief counseling. We ourselves are not a counseling center per se, even though I am a licensed therapist. But we do work with some great therapists who own their own practices. And when there is a need for maybe some trauma work or some one-on-one work, we know the best professionals to get those families to, in addition to the resources from our library. So, it's just different avenues you can take as far as what is needed for support. So, when we're talking natural bereavement, where peer support education is going to be the key, that's where the Hearts Can Heal program comes in. And like I said, I usually spend about like 3 months, myself and KC, our executive director, as the program team, just looking at all of those families we've been working with since our last program, who have called us and who we've been supporting. And we get them in. We ask them to make that 8-week commitment. It's once a week for 8 weeks, and that there's no cost to any of our services, and we will move mountains to make sure they get that personalized healing. But all we ask is that they show up every week for 8 weeks, and that is a commitment to themselves, to their families, to say that's how important this is. That daddy died and we are doing this. And even though, yeah, there was a lacrosse practice that we're missing, that's how important this is. We're making sure that our family is healing. So that's our, and we ask the same of our volunteers, that we have our volunteer companions that help us to facilitate those groups. And like I said, the parents are there too. So they're stuck with me. I have the adults always in my adult group while the kids are split up into their different age groups, because Hearts Can Heal, that's the name of the program. It runs from 6-year-olds to 18-year-olds plus their parents. So we split them up into 3 different age groups. But again, putting a lot of care into it. I meet every single family as I'm growing the group, really paying attention to personalities and interest level. And so it's not as easy as, 14 to 18-year-olds here and 10 to 12s there. No, I want to make sure they're paired with the right people. And that is how the magic really happens.
I love that. To think that something is like that is here in our community, right in our backyard. It's amazing. The work that you guys do, it's incredible. And it's not just folks that know to come to your facility and ask for help, but you also go out into the community when, we have tragic situations. Unfortunately, we did just recently have one. But you proactively go out and talk to the schools, and I think it was it a Boy Scout?
Yeah, absolutely. And we are proactive in the sense that we are always here, but we are never the ones that will chase you down and say, Here's our brochure, call us when you're ready." We are here. And we are here, and like you said, the professionals, the organizations, we love to be one of their first calls, and to be able to say, here's what to do, here's what to expect, here's how we can help support. And again, it is sometimes that real panic in us as adults to want to fix it right now and come up with a perfect plan so that nobody feels any sadness. And you could do everything perfectly, and there's going to be a lot of feelings that happen, good, bad, and otherwise. And it's really just about riding the wave, being comfortable in that discomfort. But we're thrilled to be the professionals here, to be that voice in everyone's ear saying, "Oh no, that's okay. That's what we want to be seeing, even though it makes us a little uncomfortable."
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So you're obviously extremely passionate about what you do and being there and highly qualified. What kind of led you down this path, or did you have an experience yourself as a young person? And tell me about that.
Yeah. So and if it's not obvious, I'm a very type A personality. So I like to have a plan. The thing I just said we shouldn't do after after grief, but I like to have a plan. I like to stick with it. So I very much understand that instinct. So I was 8 years old when I decided I wanted to be a therapist, and that was that. And I never had to put any more thought into it. I just really felt that in my bones. So that was always sort of
I'm sorry for interrupting. How at 8 years old, how did you even know what a therapist was? I think I wanted to be a dog trainer.
I well, I loved my school counselor. I would say Miss Elia, she 3rd grade was when I guess she came around and did like presentations for the school, and I just thought how cool that there is an adult that's here just for emotions and not to test you on anything and really just to support you. I just thought that was the coolest idea. So, yeah, that was my first, that was my introduction to anything mental health related. And then as you go through school, 8th grade, they make you shadow a professional. I was shadowing Miss Elia, and then 11th grade, they make you do a whole report on a professional and who was getting an email from little old Julia. It was Miss Elia. So, and I think she got married halfway through there, but she was always Miss to me. And that was just, it just felt right. So that was always my plan. But then I will say it seems crazy that this is how it all played out. But when I was 12, my dad died really suddenly. My parents were not together. I'd always grown up in a two-parent household. It's very normal to me. I enjoyed having two holidays, and I didn't go through a divorce or anything. That was just completely normal to me. But it felt like separate households. It felt like, this is my mom's house and my dad's house, and those two don't really know each other. They're not connected. They're my parents. So when my dad died suddenly of a heart attack, came home from school one day and I saw the answering machine blinking back in the day of landlines. And I was the only one home. My brother wasn't home yet. And it was a voicemail from my paternal aunt, my dad's sister-in-law. And my worlds did not mix, mom's house and dad's house. So I thought something is up. She never has left us a message. So I knew, and my little type A control freak brain, that was probably the birth of her, because I'm trying to suss out and figure out what's happening. But anyway, long story short, my mom did what parents do, and she got me into a therapist right away, which I think lasted all of 1 to 2 sessions, because that was not a need at the time. I was sort of just in a haze and trying to navigate. And it's very difficult to ask a child to take this chaos and put it into digestible language and deliver it to a professional sitting across from them. So, talk therapy, especially, is not something that we often recommend to children or even teens. Certainly, if they want to talk, go for it. But I love creative therapies, anything where you're able to kind of get the body involved as well as the mind.
For sure. So we're a blended family of 3 boys, and, going through the teenage years, like, it's hard to get them to talk normally, just in everyday conversation. "Hey, how was your day?" "Good." "What did you do?" "Nothing." "Oh, what'd you learn at school?" "Stuff." You get, like, these one-word answers, so I can't imagine sitting on a couch or, wherever with a talk therapist trying to pull out of them, so I think the creative therapy is awesome.
Absolutely. Or even there's hiking therapy, which I love, especially for a teen, or an athletic teenager who's, maybe not super creative or into that, but just get them out there moving. They'll start talking before you know it, and you'll get into things that you didn't realize you could. So I utilize that, that experience, but then also very quickly, and I grew up in a different area, but my mom took me to a children's grief center that was different than Olivia's house, similar but different. Mainly in that I went to a group where there was no adult element to it. My mom would drop me off and I'd get out at the front door of this grief center and I'd go inside and I'd do it. And then she'd pick me up and I'd go home. And so once again, it felt like this was a me thing that I was dealing with about my dad. And my mom is wonderful and we are so close, but she was doing what was recommended, and what was, and so that too I use, even when I have a parent that I work with that is, maybe was divorced from their partner who died, and they say, I don't need to sit in a group with the women who are mourning their husbands, or, who are mourning their children. I wouldn't belong there. And our answer is yes, you do, because you are parenting a child that is upstairs who is mourning that person. And that is why you are here. And yeah, so after that experience, I would say that, is just, again, I didn't know that was going to be the catalyst for my career. I really didn't at that point. But moving forward in life, going to college for psychology, going to grad school for counseling. And while I was in grad school, I just had the most random project to do. It was like a nothing burger of a project. It was something I did in 2 seconds, like while I'm eating lunch. I paid it zero mind. The project was like, find 5 social service agencies in the area and copy and paste their mission statement. It was so easy. It was like when you're in grad school, you're so tired, you don't mind copy and pasting 5 links and 5 mission statements. So I did it while I'm like listening to a podcast. Lo and behold, one of those 5, I don't remember the other 4, but one of them was Olivia's house. And I just randomly found it through a Google search because I grew up in Lancaster and that was where I was in grad school. So York wasn't even really on my radar. Um, but yeah, and then I saw children's grief, and that set up a little light bulb in my head of, hey, that connects to me. And then there was a section on the website that says, would you like to volunteer with us? And I thought, hey, I'm a college student, maybe I have some time for that. And lo and behold, I went to their next companion training. That was in 2013, and became a companion volunteer that worked in the children's groups. And 2 years later, when they were hiring, it was right when I was graduating from grad school. I was also shockingly like in the middle, like midst of a personal cancer diagnosis. So that whole summer is a complete blur to me, but it all just sort of worked out, and I ended up at Olivia's house. So I got hired as the program director, and worked as the program director under the founder and bereavement specialist, Leslie, for gosh, probably about 5 years ish, 5, 6 years. And then right around COVID 2021, I think I got knocked up to clinical director. And now here we are still today.
Amazing, amazing. So I didn't know that you had a cancer diagnosis.
Yes, which really also helps me a lot in this field because I have that deep understanding of, what it means to have the permanent tattoos on your body where they had to line up the radiation rays, and what it really means, cuz it's hard to explain pain to someone. I think, our brains just don't register even when someone is sick, even when they are sick right in front of us and they're saying I feel miserable. If you're not sick, you can't put your mindset there of the stuffy and the can't breathe. You're just like, okay, I'm sure that sucks. That stinks. Um, but when you have lived it, especially something like cancer, it really helps you have an element of compassion that I would not have had otherwise. So to be able to have been through, some intensive long-term, months-long treatments to hear it, because in this line of work, you do hear a lot of loss, and a lot of, and this person had this diagnosis and that diagnosis. And one of the biggest pieces is never to let them blend together into, a statistic or just another story. It is always about connecting with whoever I am talking to in that moment. So the richer of our own life experiences that we have to draw from in order to make those connections, never to make it about us. I've never talked to a client about my own diagnosis, but just to have that level of understanding, I think, is so important. And I'll see that, even working with families who have lost a child, the importance of making sure they have that connection with someone, because that can be an isolating loss in the world of bereavement.
Oh, it's so interesting. So what do you recommend? Like, so somebody going through the process, the grieving process, what do you recommend that they do to help with the reconstruction piece of it? Like, is it have some one-on-one time? Is it talk to somebody? Is it a book? Like what's the best thing somebody can do?
I wish there was a short answer, but the truth is, like I had said earlier, reconstruction is at the end of a long road. So it starts, the first part of the bereavement process is that shock and numbness where your brain is not even fully powered on. Your goal there is survival. Your goal there is one foot in front of the other, take down as much food as you can, sleep when you can. Um, the next part, when your brain powers back on, is that feelings part of the process. And that is the overwhelm. That is the tightness in the chest, can't breathe, crying, or for children, it's more of what we see as grief bursts. So it's not constant, it's not overwhelming them, but when it does come out, it comes out. as crying, as tantruming, as anger, as frustration. Could be a number of things. And again, that's natural. That's what we expect and want to see. The goal is then to cope. So whatever comes out, you accept it. You don't have to rush them off to a therapist right away. That's what we expected to see. Now we got to figure out how to cope with all of this. So ideally, a child will already have coping skills that they can draw upon. Those children will have an easier time coping with this hardship. If we were already struggling in the coping skills department, you will struggle more with bereavement. Um, that's why I sometimes, like bristle a little bit when I hear someone say their child needs grief counseling when they're having behaviors after a loss. I really want to get in there at, let's talk about this. There's no such thing as grief counseling that's going to fix anything. Grief is just something that needs to be supported. If there was already a deficit in coping skills that was already presenting itself, this is just our first time that we're really challenged here, but it's not the only time. So we got to work more on those coping skills versus just saying, "Oh, everything was fine and this loss took them down at the knees." No, let's really look at what's going on to get that support. But that's that. That's just there. Once you've gone through that and that's a process, then you are assimilating this loss into yourself. Who am I now because this loss has happened? Am I still a mother of 3 if I only have 2 living children? Am I still a daddy's girl if my dad isn't alive? Am I still a son-in-law, if my wife's parents died? How do I handle this? How do I answer these questions? And so that is all that's that introspection we're talking about. That takes a piece too. If you are able to really work through these pieces, that's where reconstruction comes in, where then you are able to take all of this work you've spent time doing and give back in some way. But you can't rush that. And people want to. And we want to just have something terrible happen and be able to just turn it around and turn it into something good. And now we're giving back. And now all of our energy is focused on that instead of hurting. You're not at reconstruction yet. You're at that feelings part of the process. And you're trying to avoid feeling them by throwing yourself into this new endeavor. So it's tricky. So I never want to act like there's a quick fix or quick road or a book you can read to get there. It takes work. It takes work.
It makes sense. Do you ever have folks, so maybe this person didn't pass away yet, they're still living and on earth, but maybe they have dementia or they had to go to assisted living, or sometimes folks are, comatose. I imagine that's a similar process because you're used to that routine, like we were talking about earlier, and that's gone because this person they're still here on earth. You can still visit them, but maybe they're not mentally the same person anymore. Do you get folks that have to cope with that?
Absolutely. We work with a lot of families on what we call pre-death support, or even if death is not on the horizon, just working with families, chronic illness as well. But it's just about always navigating the needs. So, if you're forcing your children to visit their comatose loved one for 4 hours every single day after school, and you notice that they're getting, kind of huffy with you, maybe they don't need that 4-hour visit every day after school. It's probably more important for them to have their childhood and that routine. So, again, it's just that education and that empowerment. I understand wanting your child to get every minute they can have with this person. And at the same time, what's happening is actually what's causing, some of these behavioral issues. So as much as we can help give that education at those crucial moments, the better. If we can help facilitate conversations with someone who has a terminal illness as far as wishes, or even, coaching them through writing letters and preparing in that way. We have done that many times. And yeah, I think just using that direct language is important with children. It's a crucial moment that we are very clear with them about what's happening and why we're doing all these things.
Oh, I love that. You guys are doing amazing work. I appreciate everything you do for our community. It's just so great that it's here and available for anybody that needs it. So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you either for the program or services, or just talk to you, or if somebody wanted to volunteer, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
All they have to do is call. They can visit our website. Like I said, we're a small staff of 3, so you will see all 3 of our email addresses right under staff if you want to reach out that way. Michelle Fox is our development director. She is also our volunteer coordinator. She is the one to reach out to for volunteering. I'm your gal if you have any need for services, education, just questions. But either way, if you call Olivia's house, if you call our York or our Hanover number, you will get directed immediately to the right person, and it'll be one of the 3 of us, and we will be thrilled to talk to you.
Oh, I love that. And Give Local is coming up beginning of 2026, right?
Yes, it is. I know. But speaking of Michelle, our development director, she is already busy planning our Give Local campaign every year in May. This year it's April 30th until May 1st. It's a 24-hour period of giving in our community. Michelle and Casey plan out a slogan. We have a t-shirt design if you're a champion for Olivia's house. But it is such an important event to raise money because everything that I have described is at no cost to our families, all of our services, but we are funded entirely by the community. So it is through donations and through these events that we host that allow us to do this work. And every single dollar goes directly to the children. So that's something really special and unique about Olivia's house too.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, I know our listeners got a lot out of this. I mean, such great information. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so that wraps up another episode of Bodacious Estate Conversations. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back with more great stories and tips soon. Bye.
Bodacious Estate Conversations isn't just chatter. It's about learning, taking action, and finding solutions that actually work. If today's episode resonated, share your thoughts, subscribe, leave a review, and pass it along to someone who could use a hand. More stories, smart strategies, and practical guidance are coming in the next episode. Don't miss it.